welcome to our second Design Feeling Fireside Chat. And this time I have the pleasure of welcoming Cory Lebson. Cory is he's a researcher, and he's also a past president of the UXPA International, so the User Experience Professionals Association. And he's also an author of the book called the UX Careers Handbook. And Cory and I had a really good chat on managing the UX career crisis and several other things that were really relevant to especially how I was feeling, as a designer, as a practitioner, and also as a design leader as well. So I thought it'd be great to have Cory back for a more intimate fireside chat with all of us here today. So thank you so much for joining. And I've got some familiar faces as well in the room, in a lot of my friends and former colleagues and so on. So it'd be great if you could maybe do a bit of an intro as well. But first of all, I'll probably let Cory, if you'd like to kind of tell us a bit about yourself, and we'll just go around the room, and if all of us could just give us a little intro about themselves.
Sure. So I am based in Maryland, which is immediately north of Washington, DC. And I've been doing UX like forever as a researcher. I started I started in at University of Maryland in 1992, where it was in psychology, and kind of fell into a professor's lab who was doing research at the time. And yeah, I mean, it's really what I've been doing for forever, yeah, so I like doing research. I love doing in-person stuff. I always love doing in-person stuff, yeah, and I mean that's kind of what I do. So
great. Cory, who would you like to pass it on to?
Let's see. Well, I see it's Felipe, is how you say it? Or yeah, immediately next to my little box. So
okay, well, nice to meet you. My name is Felipe. I'm a Brazilian, but I live in Portugal for 6 years now. I'm studying creativity, and I'm focused right now in collective creativity, group creativity. So basically, to understand how we can be better at creativity in groups, developing our capacities, personal capacities in groups, and understand how the physical and the emotional environment can enhance or prejudice the development of creativity.
I love that. That's really cool.
Egle, I pass to you.
Thank you. Well, it's nice to meet you all and see you whom I've seen before already. I hope you're having a nice day. So I'm Egle. I'm Lithuanian, but I actually live in Germany. I've done my studies in the UK. As soon as my final show hit for my bachelor's, 3 days after, I got out of the UK and never came back. Yeah, I've studied there kind of in Worcester University, where Worcestershire sauce is made. By the way, the factory stinks. Multimedia design and illustration. So I've got 50% of my degree in illustration, but realized that subjectivity is not something I can deal with. So I went into product design, which actually is something that I'm really, I really love, but currently I'm struggling with a lot of kind of my 10-year experience and the requirements I have equals research type of situation, and bias within our own opinions within a large organization. So that I'm currently having a lot of fun dealing with that.
I know it well. Yeah.
All right. I pass it on to Mara.
Can you hear me, guys?
Yep.
Good. Hi, I'm Mara. I'm a Latvian living in London, and I'm just out with my dog. So yeah, so I think I'm a recovering economist. I've studied economy, and then I master's in innovation in Central St Martin's in London, and then I met Australian and 2 kids and mortgage later. I'm stuck in London. But I guess, I mean, like I've gone through multiple career crises, not just mid-career crisis. I think I had the beginning, and then every couple of years I have one, which I think is not the bad thing, because it's just kind of like makes you rethink and reconsider your own values, and just kind of like, you know, just go back to the first principles and kind of like, you know, question whether what you're doing is having impact on kind of like, you know, immediate surroundings and maybe you know, wider context where you operate. Yeah, that's me. Kim, I'll pass it on to you. I think I know you on a call.
Sure. Well, I'm outside as well, so I feel less alone, but I'm in Portugal. Hello, everybody. I am Kim. I am French. I have been in the middle of a career crisis for approximately the past year and a half. I don't know that it's my mid-career crisis, because I've done a bunch of things like Mara. But I've been in UX per se for about, I don't know, 4 years now, 5 years maybe. And I have a lot of feelings about my career as a UXer mostly. Well, I'm more like a UI designer. Anyway, I'm just like, I'm kind of bored. I'm just bored of doing the same thing. That's my main feeling. So I've been thinking about what comes next, but I think I should keep on pushing. And it's really nice to have this chat to talk about all these things. But yeah, in the meantime, I'm distracting myself with the people stuff. And cool. I will pass on to Johan. Yeah.
Sorry, I'm gonna turn on my camera. Hello. So yeah, I'm recovering from the COVID. So yeah, doesn't look great. But anyway, so I recently graduated from design management and culture, and my previous background, actually I studied interior design and then moved to business, and I realized I actually really love the interactions and conversation with people, try to understanding like what they really like or like what they need, and that's why the reason why I wanted to go into service design or like user research. But I'm still finding my way get into the door, because yeah, it's a little bit challenging currently, and yeah, so currently I'm doing some like freelance work, like strategies role, more for branding, but I realized like actually I wanted to focusing on more like a product, like design, research, that type of things. Yeah.
Great, thanks, Joanne. And we have Tom joining us as well. Tom, did you want to just introduce yourself to the rest of us?
Hey, yeah, thanks for having me. And sorry I'm late. I just put a terrible excuse in the chat.
Well, it was your birthday yesterday anyway, so you
it was. I'm not fuzzy-headed. Don't worry about that. Well, not as much as I could be. Tiny little background, just a quick intro. I work with Nirish as a teaching assistant for General Assembly. How long ago? Was it maybe 4 months ago, Nirish?
Yeah,
roughly.
End of last year.
Yeah, and I'm really keen to become more involved in the community. So loving following the podcast and loving having this offshoot presentation as well. So thanks for having me.
Thanks a lot for joining us, Tom. I'm just gonna share my screen so that we can all have a look at some of the things that we've written down. And we can always, have a discussion off the back of that as well, or something, if there's anything else we want to talk about. So here are some of the things that people have written down earlier. And Tom, feel free to write yours as well, but I guess we'll probably know that it's to you. So some of the things we can see here is, well, the question was, how do you feel about where you are in your career right now? And what's the one question about your career that you're seeking answer to? The first one was around, how do I balance not giving a fuck anymore and I care about my job and the quality of work I bring?
So I don't know who posted this, but it's the best question. Great. Completely empathize with this.
So it's not you, is it?
No, because I don't even care about the quality of my job.
Next one is around, I feel way too good to be where I am right now professionally. I'm eager for new challenges to use my full potential, but the opportunities in quotes that show up are too low on the challenge scale and/or way underpaid for what I feel I deserve. The next one is, I find this challenging as I'm trying to move into user experience designer or a service designer, but hard to get my foot in. Yeah, so there's different, I guess, levels of challenges that we're seeing here. So I'm just gonna stop sharing my screen now. I guess, Corey, you're the guest here in terms of someone who's kind of been through a lot of these challenges yourself, and you've obviously written a book about this as well. Did you want to kind of get started on what comes to your mind when you saw some of those, I guess, responses?
Well, so first of all, I think for the first decade of my career, I cared a lot about the whole quality thing and the whole gotta do a good job, and have to have people listen to me. Like if I, as a researcher, if I made a recommendation, I'd want them to be like, oh yeah, we really, this is exactly what we're looking for. We can use this. This is how we're going to use this. It's all great. In reality, what I found was they say, thank you. Okay, bye. They didn't care that much, what I did. So in the second decade, I finally realized I don't care either, which doesn't mean I don't do a good job. I still like to believe I do a good job. However, at some point I decided that my whole mindset shifted, and I'm doing the work for fun. And if people happen to be able to use I'll do what I do. I'll do my best at it. But I'm doing it because I enjoy the doing, the method, the work. And if they can use it, great. And if not, I did the work. I don't care. And on the one hand, I say, well, I stopped finding meaning. Where's the meaning? But the truth is, I found meaning. I mean, I think my most meaningful work was actually working with FEMA. FEMA's the disaster relief, the United States government disaster relief organization here in the States. Basically I worked with FEMA for 6 years. I found a ton of meaning in that, but it was good for me, and I was doing hopefully good for them too. But then I've done things like, I don't know. I mean, I did something recently dealing with, it was basically construction workers using particular tools. Did I find meaning in it? No. Did I enjoy just having a conversation with construction workers? Yes. It was actually in person. It was a couple months ago, or 2 months, or no, 1 month ago. And it was just fun to talk to construction workers. When else would I talk to construction workers? So I was like, I enjoy this, and I did it. I had one where it was unboxing a physical product. And did I add any value to society? Probably not. But it was fun to see people's faces as they open their product for the first time. So that's kind of I think that was the mind shift that it took me a very long time to get to. But now that I'm there, I enjoy work a lot more. Should I just rattle into each of those things? Should I stop? Yeah.
Yeah, I guess. Does anyone have any kind of thoughts to add to what Corey just said?
I'd like to add to this, because I literally have been talking to a few people about the caring bit, how you care and you put yourself into your work and you really exhaust yourself, and and kind of and if there is no kind of positive reception, it feels really painful in a way. And I really like what Corey you saying about kind of learning not to maybe care and focus more on the fun side of things. But I think it's a little bit the joy and suffering can coexist, and I think you need both in a way. So that unless you care, I don't think you do a good job. So I think there is, there's potentially that side. I don't know, I don't know whether there's also gender differences in, how much we feel and how we feel, but it's a super interesting subject. So yeah.
Yeah. And separate tangent, but one of my interests is empathy in UX, but not empathy for users, but empathy, dealing with empathy kind of as UX professionals, I think, are more empathetic, perhaps, on average than the population, because our whole focus is making people we want to to make people happy, ultimately. I mean, whether for a particular client or in general. But a lot of it, I think, there's a feeling aspect to that. And I think it's also, there's a hard aspect to that too. Like, dealing with being empathetic also means empathy with coworkers, with businesses, and sometimes that can be a bit much and a bit overwhelming.
Yeah,
I have a whole LinkedIn Learning course on that too. So
yeah, please feel free to share your LinkedIn Learning course as well. I was checking out some of his the lessons on that, and yeah, it's really, really good.
Right, and if you don't have access to LinkedIn Learning, by the way, they have this like monthly fee. I will say though, they let me post free access to my courses. So over the last 6 weeks, I posted one a week for free access. I think you have to watch it like within the LinkedIn window, but even if you don't have access, they should all be free. As long as you just have to scroll back far enough to find each of them, but all 7 courses are there.
So Egle, like you're one of the voices that introduced the podcast, the entire show to the world. And one of the things that you mentioned in that little quote was how, sometimes you feel like you're walking down this corridor, trying not to kind of bump onto the walls, making sure that you're doing the right thing, but at the same time, trying to balance like people's opinions with what the data says and the research says, and trying to kind of not lose your sanity, or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's very related to what Corey and Mara actually mentioned. It's really it's about not only the users, right? The users, that's okay. We care about them, right? If we get access to them, there's certain processes we apply, and it's all good, But the really hard part is really the bias that is within like the organization and around us. It's the empathy that we have to really have for our colleagues and the professionals, the requirement gathering exercises that we do on and on in the larger, smaller organizations. And I think that's really the bias corridor that we're always trying to balance out, because in one way or another, we're going to be able to, or we're going to have to kind of react to what we're being told. This is a product, you got to do this because I said so. Or this is a product that you're going to do because this is the solution we want to do. That becomes overwhelming over time. I don't think it's only me. I think it's a lot of people who just need to really do that balancing act all the time. Because users are the one thing, but the organization behind your back is the other thing. And it just really depends whether you're enabled to, get through to them in a way where you can really just use everything that is, under your belt as part of the process, for example. Or do you have to start cutting corners and lean towards one or the other side?
I had a situation very recently, like in the last month, where a client hired me to do a usability study, and I said, sure, I'm happy to do it. But then not the client that hired me, but other stakeholders said, well, this is what we get from usability. And it was totally misaligned. It was misaligned because the users it was actually different users. Like they're like we wanted naive users for the usability study, but they wanted personas of existing users and whatever. And the naive users actually were people who chose not to use the product. They did other things but they were good for the usability study. And I said I don't care. I say I don't care, but I cared. And I think I got not my client, but I got these other people angry at me because I said, you really can't. This is the wrong. Your research questions are misaligned. And I cared too much. I mean, like basically, but I'm a freelancer, so I kind of did my best to the middle ground. It still wasn't exactly, because I still felt very uncomfortable with the misaligned user concept. But they probably don't want to work with me again, which is again rare. Like it's not, these things are very rare. I'd say it happens you know, 5% of the time at most, but still 5% of the time that I have these like situations where something doesn't exactly align. As a freelancer, if I take on 20 projects a year, and all my projects are pretty small, you know, one of them will be a little off. And I won't work with them again. I mean, I always try to do my contract, whatever it is. But what I'd also say is, I think, and this gets to the second question or comment, is that I'm a freelancer and I get lots of challenges this way. But I also kind of steer my own course. So I would kind of challenge that if you feel like there's not enough challenges at work, it also, you know, by going off on your own, if or you feel comfortable doing that, you know, you kind of get to choose your own adventure in some ways. And I make mine adventurous in some ways, happy, and find my happier place that way. So yeah.
Yeah, I guess the question also becomes, how do you know how much to push and when to just let go?
Right. I mean,
because you're being paid to do the best job possible, but there are barriers in the way that's preventing you from, you know, we're doing the best job. And a lot of times those barriers are other people who've pretty much hired you to be there.
Right.
So I guess, how do you know when to just let go and say, okay, I've done my best, or to keep pushing?
I mean, I think it depends on the consequences. I mean, in this case, like this recent case, I mean, I certainly, you know, want to say, oh, you know, I just let it go. The problem is the situation was such that if I said, fine, I'll do this user group, then I truly didn't think I could do, it's not that I couldn't do a good job. I couldn't do a usability study because I had, or usability study as they defined it, because the user groups were misaligned. So I did push. I got what I wanted because the primary stakeholder said, yeah, fine, you know, do what you think a usability study is. But the secondary stakeholders said, this is not a usability study. You know, a usability study is supposed to come up with you know, all this stuff, you know, this misaligned stuff. And they're not going to want to, I mean, though, even though the one that hired me still liked what I produced, the background stakeholders ultimately will have say too, and they're not going to want me to work for them again. The consequence is fine, because, you know, I mean, certainly don't want to be disliked, but on the other hand, I don't want to work with them again because they have a different concept. It's a whole different worldview of what a usability study is, and they're not researchers at all. I mean, they're not UX at all. They're project managers basically. But I guess it just depends on consequence. What that and being liked, you know, and I want to be liked. I don't want to be disliked. But there wasn't really a consequence to it either. You know. So.
And I guess this question goes out to all of you. How do you handle emotions? For example, I used to get really angry if someone didn't you know, listen to my advice or my recommendations, and I'm like, you're paying me to be here and you don't listen to me, right? Or you don't, you know, you don't trust me. How do you guys, like, for example, manage those emotions that come up in terms of, is it anger or sadness or whatever?
I can jump in. I'm happy to.
Yeah,
I
go
think
for it.
To begin with, just to answer, maybe go back to the previous question. I have a freelance client at the moment that I took on recently, and he does not see the value of UX, which is, again, really fun, because in a lot of these cases, you have people going, I'm a UX designer. I want someone to do the research for me, and then we show them the research. In this case, I tested his app, which is he launched independently.
Kim, I think we're just hearing some muffled sounds, actually.
Really sorry. Can you hear me okay now? Or is that listen? Yeah, let me just turn up.
It sounds a bit muffled.
Is this better?
Yes.
Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, so I was just saying, so there's this guy basically lately who's been developing an app by himself. So he hired me to help him out with the UX UI, just a few hours a week, nothing much. And so I tested his app because I thought it wasn't the best in terms of usability. And it turns out that when I got back to him with the results, he just went, oh, but users don't understand. This is how it's meant to work. Typical, maybe they just don't get it. So the approach that I tried to begin with when I still had a lot of patience, I guess, was, to get him involved and get him to watch the recordings. And I made a user journey. I was just trying to get him to empathize. But I think so that would be a way to deal with the emotion, is to just really try to get them on board. That'd be my first port of call. But it's true, like after a while, I had a meeting with him yesterday or the day before, and he's just like throwing out all of these ideas about all the features that he wants to build. And it's true that it's been, it hasn't been that long, but at this point I'm just like, yeah, okay, like you pay me the same, just let's do this. I'll just develop this thing for you, because it doesn't matter what I say. So I don't know that this is the most productive way to react, but I'd be interested to hear about any other experiences like this.
Yeah, I do the same thing.
You go ahead, Corey.
I'll do the same thing. That's all. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
I have quite a limited experience because I'm just starting on my UX journey. I was a student last year. And I think I empathize with Kim's point of view, because it sounds to me like a line of best fit scenario. So you'll do the best work you can, but you know that there are walls of other people that also feel passionate. And it's about aligning what that could be in the context of getting the work done. So do I care? Yes. Do I care too much? Will it stop the work happening? Is it okay? It happens another way. Is my client still happy if they get what they want without the input from me as a UX professional that they have paid for? So, I mean, that's kind of rhetorical, but I see it as more like a line of best fit. So sort of pick your battles. It comes down to persuasion. That's a unit that we teach on the course, is how we've got that book, 6 ways to explain your point of view. I'm not sure what the title is, but it's one of those O'Reilly novels. And so it comes to sort of picking your battles and detecting whether the river can still flow at the end of the day. Can what we contribute be a positive addition, or is this a roadblock that needs maybe approaching another way? I've got a Post-it on my desk, and it's packed up because we're moving in 9 days, and it says, if you can't solve the problem, reframe the problem. So it's kind of like, can I approach this from another angle? If we can't, then it might be we need to discuss it in another way. Maybe that's just as wishy-washy as what we said. I'm not sure.
I think that was a very wise response there, Tom. I mean, I think it feels like you're a lot wiser than me, even though like, you're only just starting in a career. I was never that wise in my career.
Tom's the wisest.
Guys, you are there now. Come on. We all are.
And I like what you said around, if you can't solve the problem, reframe the problem. I guess to add to that, if you can't solve the problem, is it really your problem to solve? Do you have to solve that problem?
Yeah, what's the goal? Do you have some set goals before you begin? And is this problem in the way of those goals? If it is, then it becomes a different discussion, with your client. Say, well, I have these goals. And if, I think previously, Corey, you were mentioning that potentially your client had maybe a different goal to you as, you as a client of theirs. And so it becomes a question or more of a discussion of what are the goals here? So I think that's a constructive way and a useful way to take it away from, we want to do this, they want to do that, can't do it. It's like, well, what are the goals?
Right.
So that's another way of breaking it down, I think.
Right. I mean, I think sometimes there's probably an opportunity for alignment and with the reframing, and sometimes no matter how much you do it, like it's not going to happen. So I was thinking about something else though, which was like, if you're not doing it for, someone said, if you're not doing it for the client, like for your client, for your business, that's not why you're doing it. Would you still do a good job? And I think of like, I don't know, going running, like I'm doing it for myself, or really anything that I'm just doing it, for myself. I kind of, at this point, kind of feel like my UX is no different than my going for a run on the outside. Like it's I'm doing it for myself, and I want to do a good job. I want to run fast enough. I want to run, feel healthy enough. But it's now put in, like, it's now for me, not for them, but I'm still doing a good job for them, or at least I hope to, because I want to be successful, in personally, and for me that was freeing, like feeling, in that reason, in that way.
Can I ask a question? So I'm not a practitioner when it comes to product design. My expertise is actually in marketing, but there's Dieter Rams, I think, have this quote around the cardinal sin of not considering the environment where the user lived, or something like that. I can't remember the exact quotes, but I mean, how much do you consider your clients' circumstances? Like, how much time do you invest into understanding their context, like when you take a brief?
I mean, for me, I would say I spend as much time as I think is necessary, which changes dramatically. Like if I'm if their product is something that I use, for example, there's not much context I need. I mean, I need some basic business context, but I understand the product. If it's something that, it's a totally different industry, I need to spend a lot more time figuring it out. And even then I found it's not perfect sometimes. Like I'll still have a lot of gaps because there's only so much you can read or watch, to try to get context. But I think it varies dramatically by kind of what we're talking about.
So Felipe, like you are currently you're the the expert in creativity, and that was your PhD on creativity as well, right? So, and you're currently focusing on collective creativity. I guess my question to you around that is, how do you foster that collective sense of creativity at work, especially when sometimes it can feel like you're in this mechanical production line of just churning features out, churning products out, or churning solutions out. Sometimes it can be really difficult. Well, you might think like I'm being creative, but then it might be hard to bring your entire group into that kind of collective creative thinking. How do you do it? Like what have you found from your research?
Well, what I found until now, it's two things I think it's most important. First of all, it's people need support and trust to create together. So you need to create an environment, emotional and climate environment, so people can trust each other and can support. For example, if I need help from you, I know I can ask you without any consequences, without being judged or without being called incompetent or anything like that. So I trust you can help me and I feel supported. So this is one thing. And the second thing, I think it's honesty. So if you are open to and say to people, oh, if you want to do it, will happen this. Like Corey said, if you have like two different views of the usability questionnaire or something, but you can say, okay, we can do it, but if we do this, we get this kind of result, and maybe it's not what you're looking for, or maybe we can do this other thing, these other questions, and get a better result. But it's up to you to decide. And people will say, okay, I want to go through this way. Normally, like Ton said, you have to choose your battles. It's great, I think, this view, because sometimes it's not your problem. It's the client problem. But when cross the line, when this problem will compromise your work, you feel not aggressive, but you feel not supported, or not, you don't trust that people anymore because they are crossing a line you draw, and they don't respect that. So I think it's a little bit about it.
If I may ask, building on that, to everyone, it makes sense that we need trust and honesty to create together. It makes a lot of sense. It sounds foundational, right? To be able to be supported, to feel good in order to create whoever, you know, these people are that we have to create together, or ideate or workshop or whatever. Is alignment on the goals, on the process, the only thing that we can do when the mindset is completely different? What else can we do to create that trust or create that environment for honesty, at least, or respect for that matter?
Well, it's a good question that I'm trying to solve. But for now, what I can say based on my discoveries, but it's not definitively, it's if you have diversity in the same group, it's good, because you have a starting point where you don't know what other people think about something. For example, here you have one people from London, or another people from Germany, one people from Tunisia, I don't know. So I don't know how you think about things. I know it's different because it's another culture, but I don't know exactly what it is. So I have to be open to it. So it's great. Diversity is great for building trust, because I have to act like that. But when I'm in a place where I think I know, for example, if I'm in a group only with Portuguese people or Brazilian people, I think I know what they think. And normally I don't. I can, of course, be right in some ways, but be wrong, completely wrong in others. So if you act like this all the time, based on the I don't know what you think, independently your background, it's a good way to build trust, because I'm open to listen what you have to say.
Right. I would toss in, I think kind words are one of those, I mean, honest kind words, not like just stuff that makes no sense. But I feel like there's been less kind words since COVID started. Like, I mean, not that people weren't, certainly there was hostility and anger in the workplace before then, but especially since COVID, and I think especially since a lot of the world went remote, and people have not been, because it's harder to be mean when people are face to face. You know, I mean, yes, sure you can be, but it's harder. But once, as people became more remote, you know, I think about, even not necessarily related to work, but like I'll post something on LinkedIn, which is, you know, fairly innocuous. But then there's people who are like really nasty, like, this is a stupid idea. What? But it's just so easy to hide behind text or even remote conversations or whatever. And I think people are sorely missing niceness sometimes. So yeah, that's my thought anyway.
Sorry, I'm gonna add something. I think like one thing when someone was saying like the mindset is different when the company wanting to celebrate the diversity, but then when the company culture is already heavily built on certain mindset, and then when you come in and you feel like, oh, your idea is not being taken on board, or like is talking to different people, and more and more I personally feel like, oh, no matter what I say, end up it doesn't matter, and it kind of like pushed me to a way, it's like, oh, I just only do whatever I'm being told. And it's not about I don't care, is I realize like I don't have the power to change others' mindset in a way. So I don't know, is it something like you try to be open, but when people are not open to you, there's not much you can do about it. And I always find it struggle when when I go into a company and we was talking about, oh, company culture, you need to fit in the company culture, is really important. But then end of it's just kind of like the company selecting certain culture, certain people to fit in the company, rather than able to create an environment is able for everybody to fit in. Does it make sense?
Totally. Anyone would like to pick that up?
I mean, I guess to the point, I guess if I'm kind of reading correctly, the kind of the ability to change company culture may or may not exist, but probably not. So really it's working. I think working within whatever constraints you have. But sometimes there's a point where you probably feel like you can't. I mean, you can only get so far, and it's fair game, and particularly in kind of this great reshuffle of jobs that people are doing now. People are reshuffling because of that, I think, in some ways, like, oh, I didn't like this, or I mean, maybe like, oh, this company will pay me better or whatever. But I think also there's I never fit in anyway, and guess what? I can get a job elsewhere now, particularly I think in UX circles. So yeah, I mean, it's a do what you can, and if you're unhappy or you unsatisfied, you can always leave, which is kind of a good backstop, I think, particularly in this environment now where there seems to be, internationally way more jobs kind of in general than there are people to do them in UX.
Yeah, I think, looking back, that's probably something I would have done in terms of left early rather than hoping that things would change and, you'll be able to make the change. But sometimes you just can't. The best thing to do is just change yourself. And, it's either ship in or what is it? Shape up or ship out or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So obviously we have, Tom and Yoann, like you're relatively newer to the industry. What's been your kind of reflections, based on some of the conversations you've heard, I guess, from some of the more senior, I guess, members of the industry?
It's a wonderful glimpse into the future. So firstly, thank you for that. It's positive, it's not as positive. I'm aware, I hear a lot of rhetoric about, and it is not taking pot shots or taking aim at all, but I hear, there's lots of jobs, not enough people to do them. And then we see a lot of listicles, articles saying, a junior position came up and there were 6,000 candidates in 10 minutes. So that seems like an extraordinary dissonance. I am one of my cohort that's looking for full-time work. And I'd like to know if that's changed. If, like, I suspect there's also been a COVID deluge of people pivoting, right? Career switches. And by definition, a lot of them are going to be junior. So I'm not saying that I want to identify with that narrative. It's a very easy thing to fall into, to succumb to that narrative bias. Be all, woe is me, I'm having difficulty, therefore it must be the case. I'm not succumbing to that. But I'd like to know from people that are not established, that are not beginning now, do they see a trend or a change in the past couple of years with the availability of work, or how getting jobs has changed? Maybe they're different worlds. Maybe there's juniors and there's people that are picking things off trees because it's easy. I'm not sure, and I'm curious to learn different perspectives so that I don't fall into that narrative.
But I'll toss in just several things. One, so I wrote the UXers Handbook, came out in 2016. Even before then, I was giving career talks, that kind of thing. And there was this discrepancy. People who were, just starting to maybe a year or two in had an awful time finding a job. People who were 3, 4, 5 or more years in, the world was just open to them. And I think that still exists today. 5 years plus, the world is just open. Like, there are just tons of jobs. but the employers are very, they say, well, we want someone with enough experience to hit the ground running because we're desperate. We need, and I think it's a big problem. But it remains a big problem. My 21-year-old daughter who wants her first job in design and design or animation, she's just starting to apply for jobs. She's basically not finding anything right now, which is funny. I mean, and it's not funny. It's or ironic maybe. Is that I see so many jobs, and I'm certainly kind of on the cusp of that, paying attention to careers and in design and such. And it's still a struggle for her. And granted, she still has 2 months till graduation, but it is a struggle. It is a struggle to kind of find something. And there's no good answer. Like there's just not. I mean, there's things you can do, and obviously people do find their first job, but it's not easy, and it should be easier, and it's not. But companies are not willing to do the work sometimes because they want to hit the ground running.
I'd like to comment on that. I think the problem is with people's inability to coach. I think that's one of the problems, and they see it as a addition to what they do already, rather than kind of like investment in the future. I mean, I've had multiple conversations around, should we bring someone junior? Should we bring someone with experience? And I think, both have pros and cons. Someone with experience comes with, very specific ways of working and their own kind of like mindset where, the young kids, I mean, like there's a great research, I think, from NASA, where they basically tried to find the smartest people in NASA, like in the 60s or something like that. And, they ran this big study, and they found this 31-year-old white male as the genius. And then they ran basically the study on the general population. And they realized the 5-year-olds can solve problems, more in a more innovative way, like at a higher level than anyone older than 5-year-olds. So I think there's just the kind of like perception that the young people don't have experience. That means they can't do it. But I think kids learn from very little data. So I think that it's just the narrative that needs changing from my point of view. That's my 2 cents.
Great, thanks, Mara. We're almost out of time, and it's been a very invigorating discussion on lots of different topics, actually. But I'd just like to again, thank Cory for joining us today, and also thank each and every one of you for being part of this discussion. I hope you managed to take something out of it, or empathize with how others are feeling, and that maybe you're not on this, we're all probably on the same boat trying to solve the same kind of problems. And sometimes, it's just good to kind of, get this off our chest, and that actually helps us feel better sometimes. You don't have to, maybe even if we don't have a solution just yet. Any final thoughts from anyone before we wrap up, or from Cory?
I know it's great to talk with all of you. Definitely, I don't think any of us are connected on LinkedIn, I don't think, but definitely feel free to connect if you'd like. But yeah, it's great to be here. Great to talk with all of you.
And Cory, I think if people contact you, they can get a 20% discount on your book.
Yeah, I do have a coupon from a discount code from the publisher. But I'm not supposed to post it on the web. But anyone who wants to can just email me and I'll send it.
Cool. And also, please do check out Cory's LinkedIn courses as well. There's some really good courses there, really high end, really high production quality on those courses. I was really impressed. It's really good stuff there. But no, thank you so much for joining us. And next time we will have Ryan Rumsey. Ryan he's an author of a book called Business Thinking for Designers. He wrote that through InVision. And he's an ex-Apple and an ex-Nestle and EA Sports. So his episode is going to be released next week, and he'll be joining us for a fireside in 2 weeks' time. So I hope you can all join us for that. And until then, we'll see you next time.